Hey everybody, Justin Cook here, and we are a little less than 7 months out from the release of It Chapter 2, which is hitting theaters on September 6, 2019. So I want to make a video where I essentially go over everything we know so far and what to expect from the movie. I'll be touching on everything from casting, to set photos, to plot details, to even when we can expect a trailer and box office predictions. Also, keep in mind there may be some minor potential spoilers for the next It movie in this video, but without much further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's start off with the basics. It Chapter 2 is a sequel to 2017's It, and features the Losers Club going back to their hometown of Derry, Maine in 2016, 27 years after the incidents of the first film. The director of It, Andy Muschietti, and screenwriter of It, Gary Dauberman, are both returning to their respective duties for this installment. Dauberman especially has been establishing quite a bit of cred for himself in the horror genre, having written both Annabelle films and The Nun recently as well. Now, if you've read It, you know that the first half of Stephen King's novel focuses on the kids, and the second half of his novel focuses on the adults, during both of their struggles with Pennywise. So It Chapter 2 will primarily focus on the adult versions of the Losers Club, but the young versions of the members of the club we saw in the first movie will be featured in flashbacks, meaning that the original cast of kids will be reprising their roles. So you may ask who will be playing the adult versions of the Losers Club. First up, we have X-Men Dark Phoenix and Glass star James McAvoy as Bill Denbrough. We have New Zealand actor Jay Ryan as Ben Hanscom, who, fun fact, is actually making his American feature film debut after a 2-decade-long career in TV with this movie. Oscar-nominated actress Jessica Chastain is playing Beverly Marsh. Former SNL star Bill Hader is playing Richie Tozier. Old Spice guy Isaiah Mustafa is playing Mike Hanlon. The guy who plays Deputy So-and-so from the Sinister movies, James Ransome, is playing Eddie Kaspbrak. And actor Andy Bean, who's actually set to star in DC's Swamp Thing TV show as the titular superhero, is playing Stan Uris. And of course, Bill Skarsgård, our Pennywise from the first It, who gave a really chilling, amazing performance, is reprising his role as well. Not to mention an older version of Henry Bowers, the bully from the first movie, who some people weren't sure if he lived or died at the end of that film, is being played by actor Cheech Grant. And Javier Botet, the leper from the first movie, who terrorizes Eddie, is returning to an undisclosed role this time around, likely to be reprising his role from the first one. But outside of the Losers Club and Henry, as for new characters in this movie, Xavier Dolan, who recently starred in Boy Erased and is a director himself, having made a really great 2014 movie called Mommy, is set to play Adrian Mellon in It Chapter 2. Adrian, for those of you who haven't read the book, is a Derry citizen and gay man in a relationship with a character named Don Haggerty, played by Taylor Frey. Don't get too attached to Adrian because in the book, Adrian and Don are attacked by 3 homophobic bullies, and the former of which is thrown over a bridge where Pennywise resurfaces and claims his first victim. This, of course, continuing Pennywise's tradition of resurfacing every 27 years to feast on the residents of Derry. And this whole sequence may very well be the opening scene of the movie. Also, an interesting bit of trivia that a lot of people I think have just forgotten to mention is that Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, and Bill Hader have all actually worked together before, them being the 3 biggest stars in this movie. They worked together on the movie The Disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, so it's a bit of a reunion for them. Also, another fun tidbit is that Xavier Dolan actually directed Jessica Chastain in The Death and Life of John F. Donovan, which is an upcoming one of his movies, but actually he ended up cutting her from the finished version of the film. But ultimately they have a connection too. But moving back to the story of It Chapter 2, in the book it's the death of Adrian and several child murders that take place in the town that convinces an adult Mike to call up the former members of the Losers Club to remind them of their promise to return to town if the killings ever started again. Mike is the only member of the Losers Club to stay behind in Derry and work as the town librarian. Bill is working as a horror writer in England and is married to an actress named Audra, who will be played by actress Jessica Weixler. Beverly is a fashion designer with an abusive husband. Eddie runs a limousine rental company. Richie is a disc jockey. Ben is a successful architect, and Stan is a wealthy accountant. They all remember some of the traumatic events of their past, but generally in growing up have forgotten or blocked out much of their interactions with Pennywise. So It Chapter 2 went into production in June of last year in and around Toronto, so we've been getting a lot of great images from the set of the movie, including this one of Bill Hader laughing it up with Pennywise, a personal favorite of mine, but we also got this one of the entire group in action together back in Derry, and you'll notice that the adult actor who is playing Stan is missing from this ensemble, meaning that the movie adaptation will still probably be staying true to his death in the book. For those of you who don't know, in the book, they all return to town except Stan, who, after speaking with Mike, slits his wrists, killing himself because he's so terrified of facing it again. We've also seen photos of Pennywise sitting on a Paul Bunyan statue, which is another scene out of the book, in which the killer clown manifests itself as the statue to terrorize Richie. So, moving on, if you're familiar with Stephen King and It and the Macroverse lore, you know that a giant magical space turtle is the antithesis to Pennywise and helps the Losers Club out in their pursuit of the clown. While hinted at in the first film, this turtle is expected to play a much bigger role in Chapter 2. Director of the film told sci-fi.com, quote, "I think in the second part the turtle will try to help them. In the second movie they have to retrieve their memories from the summer of 1989. The keys to defeating Pennywise are in the past. The turtle left a few clues to their childhood that they don't remember, and that's how we jump back to 1989, end quote, which explains how the flashbacks involving the Losers Club as kids will come about. In the book, it's this turtle god whose name is Matarin that serves as a guide of sorts to the Losers Club and how to defeat Pennywise, and convinces Bill to go head-to-head with a version of it in its truest form, in something called the Ritual of the Chudd, a spiritual battle of sorts between two forces, and Bill does this as a child to defeat Pennywise, and also does this upon his return 27 years later as an adult. The sequence in the book is so conceptually challenging and visually ambiguous, but screenwriter Gary Dauberman did in fact say that we can expect to see this sequence interpreted for the screen in some way in It Chapter 2, which I can't wait to see how they do that since the scene is so abstract, but I'm sure it will be a very memorable, unique visual experience. If you're thinking that it sounds like It Chapter 2 will be taking more of a step toward the supernatural, even psychedelic side of things, you're definitely not wrong, and that's even further going to be demonstrated by the character of Mike, who the director plans on adding a layer of darkness to as a character. According to the director, quote, "Staying in Derry took a toll with him. I want him to be a junkie actually, a librarian junkie. When the second movie starts, he's a wreck. He will bear the role of trying to figure out how to defeat him. The only way he can do that is by taking drugs to alter his mind." So personally, as someone who loved 2017's It, one of my major concerns for this film is that, much like the It miniseries, it's going to fall off in terms of quality in telling the adult part of this story. While it's of course way too early to tell if this movie will live up to the hype and the high bar set by the previous installment, I was able to find a quote from actor James Ransone, who's playing Eddie in this movie, who basically said that we don't have to temper our expectations. He said, quote, "All the things that you liked about the first, you'll like about the second. I saw a shot last night and I thought, that's one of the coolest shots in a movie I've seen in the last 10 years, end quote. Now, of course, he's biased being an actor in the film, but it's also a ringing endorsement that at least fills me with some confidence that the movie is going to be as fun and scary as the first one. And additionally, the director promised that this movie will be, quote, "scarier and more intense and crank up the horror." Next up, another question is, when can we expect to see a bit of footage from this movie? It's interesting because besides a handful of photos and a teaser poster, Warner Brothers has released very little content surrounding It Chapter 2. In fact, the only footage that has been shown to a public audience at all was a brief sequence of the adult Losers Club reuniting at a Chinese restaurant revealed at San Diego Comic-Con. So it's highly probable that the release of the trailer for this film will coincide with the release of another Stephen King feature film adaptation, Pet Sematary, which hits theaters on April 5th. It Chapter 2 has a nearly identical release date to the first It, which hit theaters on September 5th, and that movie's trailer came out in late March during CinemaCon. My prediction is this: I think that It Chapter 2 trailer is going to drop at CinemaCon 2019, which runs from April 1st to April 4th, be released online shortly after it's shown to the crowds there, and then be attached to screenings of Pet Sematary throughout its theatrical run. Essentially, it seems most likely that the It 2 trailer will hit the internet sometime between April 1st and April 4th. And having said all that, don't be surprised if you see an It Chapter 2 teaser trailer may be something that's like 30 seconds or a minute long, even before April 1st. Now, in the realm of giving predictions, obviously It was a massive success at the box office in 2017. It literally shocked the industry by making $700 million worldwide, about 20 times its production budget of $35 million, making it the #1 highest grossing horror movie of all time. Domestically, it made an insane $327 million from a $123 million opening weekend. So the question is, can we expect a similar box office performance for the sequel? First off, the sequel does have a higher budget, which makes sense considering that this movie seems to have a more star-studded cast and some pretty ambitious set pieces and visual effects. But that doesn't mean that the bar for success is higher to make up for that higher budget. No matter what happens, it's hard to imagine a scenario where Warner Brothers is disappointed by the amount of money that this movie makes. But my personal prediction is that outside of the onslaught of Disney movies, It Chapter 2 will end up being one of the most lucrative movies of the year. If I had to put numbers to it, I'd say that this movie will score a higher domestic opening weekend than the original, with somewhere in the realm of $135 million, but overall a lower final domestic gross in the range of $310 to $320 million. Overall, though, I'd say it will make more money worldwide, coming in at around $750 to $800 million. But of course, it's all up in the air at this point, and it's just speculation. Alright, everybody, that is my comprehensive rundown of everything you can expect from It Chapter 2. I'll certainly be there opening day, as I can't wait to see how this half of the book is translated to the screen. In the comments below, tell me if you're excited for It Chapter 2, how do you feel about the things we know so far, and what is your box office prediction for the movie? Also, remember to follow me on Twitter at RealCook, and yeah, that about does it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.